Alright, this is going to be part 7 in talks and readings on the book, the Shamanic Wisdom in the Pyramid Text by Jeremy Naydler. This is part 3 of the sarcophagus chamber text explained in chapter 7. Page 192, part 3, preliminary presentation of offerings, dealing with utterances 32 and 43 through 57. After the opening of the mouth and the divine suckling, the water purification of utterance 32 is repeated. This marks the beginning of the third phase of the liturgy, which consists of a preliminary presentation of 14 different adult food offerings which the newborn king can now graduate to. The first 7, which are in utterances 43 through 49, include wine, beer, bread, and garlic. These having been presented, the Ka of Unas is now identified with Ra. I repeat, the Ka of Unas is now identified with Ra, while the offering table itself is brought in. I think that is a very key statement. That is sourced from utterance 50. Then a further 7 offerings of cake, meat, beer, and wine are given, from utterances 51 to 57. It is here that we meet the formula that generally precedes the presentation of an offering. O king, take the eye of Heru. That is in the book. That part of the text is in the book Melanin, A Key to Freedom by Dr. Richard King. O king, take the eye of Heru. The symbol in this book, he uses the word Horus, or the name Horus, which is the Greek version. The symbolism of the presentation of the eye of Heru, or Horus, derives from the mythological episode in which Seth tears out the eye in their battle of supremacy over Egypt, which I referenced to the body. The loss of the eye that Seth tears out constitutes a loss of spiritual vision that is essential to restore if the king is to be fit to rule the country. A very key statement. This is what the powers that be want to do to every individual on the face of the earth, except the ones that they choose not to is to calcify the pineal gland, i.e. the eye of Heru, which basically constitutes a loss of spiritual vision. You can just say that it's a tearing out of this organ, meaning that the scientists back in the early 1900s thought that this shit was atrophy. You know what I mean? But even before that, Descartes said it was the seat of the soul. Which Aset, and how you spell her name as a goddess, is in reference to the throne of Osiris. It's a very beautiful shit. I mean, it's just very beautiful. But anyway. Okay. As we have seen in chapter 3, the papyrus dates from the Middle Kingdom, but contains elements that were already old at the time the pyramid texts were written. Okay. The papyrus describes a series of ritual scenes leading to the coronation of the Horus king and his union with his father Osiris through the Kini, or the Khini garment ritual. Whether the king literally unites with his dead predecessor or whether he went through a mystical experience of dying to be reborn remains a question of interpretation. But in the overall scheme of the drama, the king's coronation was preceded by 7 ritual scenes in which the produce of the land was brought to the king in order to prepare him for his coronation. Now, each time, whether it was produce from animals, such as meat and milk, produce from plants, such as bread, wine, and wood, to make furniture, or produce from the mineral kingdom, such as precious stones and metals, was presented to the king as an eye of Heru. Okay, and so these are dealing with the elements of the earth and the life within those elements, represented as the eye of Heru, presented to the king. Now, in other words, and the eye of Heru was that which is great of magic. So, in other words, the presentation of offerings had the effect of equipping the king with the means of overcoming the spiritual blindness inflicted upon him by Seth. Okay, let me repeat this. In other words, the presentation of offerings had the effect of equipping the king with the means of overcoming the spiritual blindness inflicted upon him by Seth. Okay. After the presentation of offerings, the king ate a ritual meal called a hetep meal, an offering meal, which along with the coronation rite empowered him to produce with the arduous rites that were to follow, namely his mystical conjunction with the god Osiris. And I put in parentheses, soul awakening. Okay. An exact parallel to the Ramesseum dramatic papyrus sequence of rites can be seen in the said festival ceremonies. That's very key. Just as because the said festival is very ancient, and the Ramesseum dramatic papyrus can be the source of the very ancient pyramid text of the said festival. Okay, just as the heart of the Ramesseum dramatic papyrus rituals, there was the mystical union of the king. Now remember, the word yoga in the Hindu means union. Was the mystical union of the king with Osiris through the Kini garment episode. So the Kini garment, or the Qeni garment, would represent the embrace the embrace of Osiris upon the king, the deceased king, or the deceased person, human. So at the heart of the said festival there were the secret rites that also seem to have involved the Kini garment. These secret rites were likewise preceded by the king eating a sacred meal in the hall of eating, and a coronation ceremony that served to empower the king before he underwent the main rite of death. All right, main rite of death and rebirth. This is straight up the source of the whole shit dealing with the passion of the Christ and him eating food. Now, isn't it strange that we know today from the coroner, the people who are coroners and morgues, that usually dealing with the autopsy, a deceased person, either before he dies or in the process of dying, defecates or has a bowel movement. So I find it strange that they're preparing him for this Last Supper, basically, before his death and rebirth, when, you know, by the end of the day, or at least the middle of the next day, he's going to be, and this is in reference to the Jesus thing, he's going to be going up to the Father. In ancient Kemet, it would be the king going to the Father, which would be Osiris. And the embrace of that, the king or the son and the Father, would be the Kini garment. Okay, and this Last Supper is literally used to empower the king before he goes into the death rebirth ritual. Okay, and the extreme understanding, like in the book The Magical Teachings of Ionis, the crucifixion is not the death, but it is the process of the death and rebirth to empower the soul as a mediator between heaven and earth. Okay, so it says in Figure 7:7, pt.7 sits on a throne before a table of offerings. This is the hetep meal. Okay, from a relief, and this is from a relief in the sanctuary of his pyramid temple at Saqqara, which was built by Imhotep for King Djoser. Okay. Now, there is no compelling reason why it could not be seen as portraying the living king eating a sacred meal prior to undergoing the secret rites at the core of the said festival. Okay. Just trying to read what I have in parentheses. In both the Ramesseum dramatic papyrus ceremonies and those of the said festival, which maybe I'll read a section of that to get you to understand what the said festival is. There was which I believe the said festival was stolen and brought into the great royal family of England. And so Queen Elizabeth, who had her 60-year jubilee, is aligned with the Sigi ceremony of the Dogon and the said festival of the ancient Kemites, who are akin to the Dogon, or the Dogon are the descendants of the Egyptian ancient Kemites. In both the Ramesseum, the Ramesseum Dramatic Papyrus ceremonies, and those of the said festival, there was a concluding great feast, which is the Last Supper. That's why it's called a concluding great feast. A fact that is also reflected in part 5 of the pyramid text of offering liturgy. The pyramid text offering liturgy. Okay, let me see if I can go ahead and give you part 4 real quick. I have a lot of notes. Let me see. We'll stop that. That ends part 3, so we'll stop right there, and we'll continue on with part 4 here in a second. The title for part 4 is called The Anointing with the 7 holy oils. Okay, now remember that the word Kadesh, all right, derived from Kush, means the oily or the holy. See, the word holy and oil are derived from similar words or phrases or concepts. All right, holy is Helios, all right, which is in representation of the sun. Okay, and the sun is the reason that the melanin within the epidermis of the skin is called for by melatonin to act as an umbrella to protect the skin. But it also, during the process of being in the sun, these different oils and things like that, such as vitamin D, is produced, and this vitamin D is parallel to sheep lanolin. Okay, sheep lanolin, which is an oily substance that humans use today in lotions and oils and things like that. And then you think about the sheep and the shepherd. Okay, Jesus was the shepherd, his followers were the sheep. Okay, so that's just letting you know right there. So we'll come back with part 7. Part 4 on page 195. This is Rhythm Phoenix. Ashe.